you are and please correct me, but you would be classified as a mindset coach, performance coach. What is the terminology used there?
Yeah, I'm a chartered psychologist, so
Okay.
I've studied psychology. Again, there are different kind of routes in, dependent on where you study and qualify. The UK route is I did an undergraduate in mainstream psychology. I then did a master's in sports psychology.
Okay.
A lot of my time at that point was spent in professional sporting environments. And then because psychologist is a protected title, you then go on and do another qualification to get a chartership. So I'm a chartered psychologist,
Hmm.
but again, I would probably describe myself as a performance psychologist.
Performance psychologist. And do you work with people more in sport, like you were, or do you work with people as well and just like trying to get the most out of their career, whatever that looks like?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a journey actually. So I started in sport 20 odd years ago, showing my age, 20 odd years ago as a strength and conditioning coach. So I was working in professional sport for 12 years as a strength conditioning coach. And then during that time, I did the main part of the study, I guess, with a intention to stay within professional sport, which I did for a period of time. And then within the last 3 or 4 years, again, I've just wanted to make those kind of learnings from that environment a lot more accessible to the everyday person, so just a general population. So I found myself working in a lot of different environments and probably a little less so in sport. And as I say, my passion now is to really make a lot of the insights that I've gathered over that time as free and as accessible to everybody that I think is going to benefit from it, not just those privileged people that happen to have access to a psychologist or sports psychologist within their
Mhm.
line of work. So yeah, still have an interest in sport and an input in sport, but I've tried to diversify and like I say, just be as involved in as many environments as possible.
That's great. With, I mean, just broad speaking, what would you classify mindset coaching, as? And would you say it actually works? Because I've talked to people, I've spent a lot of time in sport as well. I've trained with a lot of people. I know the benefit of it. I've had the privilege to work with quite a few great people in this field. But some people, when they talk about that, they're like, oh, you're just getting a motivational
Yeah,
speech,
yeah,
whatever that is.
yeah, yeah. Um, I could give a very short answer, but I'm going to give you a bit more context. Um, when I was working as a strength conditioning coach, as you say, I'm over in the UK, so I was working in cricket specifically. Um, and again, I've kind of told this story on a number of occasions, but I think it really helps to get my message across in this context. The players or the athletes that I was working with there was a general level of competence. They were all very good technically at what they did, and it was a very technical sport. From a physiological perspective, so the area that I was involved in at that time, again, there wasn't a great deal of difference. Some people were slightly better at speed work over strength or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but generally speaking, again, there was a really good level of physical competency. And so you're looking at all of these parameters, the technical, the tactical, the physiological, and it was a pretty level playing field, yet performance was inconsistent. Some people would go out and perform well and often, and some people would perform intermittently. And that got me into then thinking, well, if all of these other things are there and present, then what is the missing piece? And that led me down the kind of psychological rabbit hole, I guess, just to say, well, that there must be something to do with those individuals' mindsets that either allow them like consciously to perform better than their peers, or they've applied some of those principles and they're actually making a difference. And so I firmly believe that mindset is central to all of those things. I think they're all contributory, and again, it'd be easy for me to say it's all about psychology and it's all about mindset. Of course, it's not. They're all interlinked. They're all interchangeable. But mindset is as important, as foundational as all of those other attributes as well. So if that was the long answer, then the short answer is, again, I think like knowing, like being curious enough to want to know how my mindset can enhance or improve, I think is the initial part. It all starts with an awareness. So if I know myself, if I know some of my thinking patterns, if I know why I might have certain beliefs that might limit my potential, um, if I know my relationship with confidence or resilience, or again, some of these kind of labels that we kind of throw out there quite easily now. Um, if I understand myself, then at least I can determine whether I want to try and affect or do something about that. So it's, it's to me, it's foundational to everything else, but as equally important as those other attributes as well.
So you believe you can actually take control of that internal dialogue, that internal voice? Because I know a lot of people, and it's a challenge. Like you feel like that's just there. You don't have that control over that. It's just going to come, and you can listen to it, and it's just part of your voice. But you believe that you can actually change and affect that.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Again, a myth that I think needs to be debusted is that our personality, who we are, defines us. Yeah, our personalities are fixed. So we get to a point and we're just like, well, this is how I show up most of the time, and so that means that's the only way that I show up. Again, something that I'm really or that I try to get out from the outset when I'm talking to people is like, again, acknowledge and accept who you are. That's really important. So this isn't about change for change's sake, but also knowing that you've got the capability to be able to be anything else that you want to be as well. So oftentimes, again, we'll be met with that resistance. Just be, well, no, I can't do that because that's not me. But it could be you. Yeah. And so again, I think if we start from that point to say, this is how I show up. I'm again, I'm really familiar with what that looks like, and again, it, in the most part, serves me really well. When is it going to be useful to potentially dial that up a little bit more, or dial that down a little bit more, and be able to maneuver or transition around some other styles that might serve me differently in this space? So knowing that, then like you say, then it gives you the agency to be able to navigate yourself around anything that you want to do, anywhere that you want to be.
And how do you navigate that line of positive self reflection or just allowing yourself to be versus the negative dialogue on how you perform or your actions or your
Yeah,
habits?
I mean, again, a lot of the time, Chase, I think it's just, first of all, just the acceptance and the awareness as to, is this internal narrative actually serving me right now? Yeah. So it's not to suppress that. We're all gonna, like, there's a negativity bias, right? That's there for a reason. Again, if we go back to our primitive brain, then to survive, we had to think of what the danger was around us. An intrinsic survival mechanism, and the brain hasn't necessarily evolved since those times. But what it's done in the modern world is then like affected or sabotaged us differently. And so, if I know that I'm not necessarily going to always look through the positive lens at every situation, yeah, that's going to be balanced or counterbalanced or even overbalanced at times by an alternative approach. If I'm able to step away and say, right, well, here is more of an optimistic outlook, but similarly, here's more of a risk sensitive or threat aware outlook. Where do I want to position myself on that continuum? We'll all have a predisposition. We'll all tend to gravitate somewhere along that continuum. But again, like I say, that doesn't mean that that is required for every situation that we find ourselves in.
And that like that's great to hear, and it's easy to kind of digest like in my mind. But when I'm actually in those situations, like when, for example, if we're doing sport, I used to do competitive CrossFit. That's a sport of suffering, and it's just how hard can you suffer day in and day out, for training to get better. And it's easy to go into that maybe or reflect after, but when you're there and you're dying on that bike, or even after whatever the workout is, you it's so funny how you can have like in your goal, like, okay, I'm chasing this. And then as soon as you get that, you feel great for half a second. And then you're like, well, I let off the gas over there, or I did this wrong over there. And then you immediately start to beat yourself up, and you look at the flaws that you made in that aspect. And there doesn't seem to be any satisfaction with how you did. Like, even though you set that predetermined goal in your mind and you hit it, you immediately look backwards and you're like, well, here's all the things I did wrong. So, how can we navigate that to actually look at it from a more positive mindset
Yeah.
or outlook?
And again, it's a great question, but a really deep question as well in the same
Of
sense.
course.
Um, I think the first bit for me there is understanding the whole reason as to why you're doing that endeavor in the first place. So oftentimes we'll, we'll do the thing without considering the importance as to why we're doing it. Okay. And so then our appraisal of that is probably going to be skewed based on the what it is we're doing it for, or the what it is we're trying to attain, or what success means in that moment. And does that really align to that intrinsic, deep rooted reason as to why this is important to me? So I'd say, just to go back to an initial step, if you're going to put yourself in those positions, then try and I say try, quote unquote, because it's really difficult to articulate as to why this is important for me. The reason why it's difficult is because, again, the brain isn't necessarily that great at conveying emotion. Yeah. And why I'm doing this has got a significant emotional attachment to it. So if I'm able to try and understand the reason as to why I'm doing this thing, and align my responses to the why as opposed to the potential outcome or the output or the end result of that particular session or competition or what have you. And again, I think it will serve you very differently. Yeah.
Can we improve our ability to articulate that over time?
Again, I think it's just a knowing as to what it is. So let's kind of put this into context a little bit. If I like oftentimes, and we've probably done it in our exchange and prior to coming onto this podcast. Our, our initial greeting with somebody that we've not met before normally is, "Oh, good to meet you. Like, what do you do?" Yeah, and we often describe the what. What we need to try and understand is like, again, the what doesn't define who I am. Yeah, the what is just a product as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I think probably the best way to try and extract this understanding is to go back and think of times or moments that whether there was somebody that was really significant in my life, whether it was a like really happy childhood memory. Again, oftentimes it will be going back into childhood and through adolescence to try and work this out, to try and come up with stories that then expose some kind of common themes that allow me to then align what it is that I'm doing now to what is really important to me. Yeah. Um, so again, as an example, you work with a lot of professional sports people, and a typical question again would be like, okay, well, again, why do you do what you do? And they'll say, oh, because I don't know, because I want to win a medal. Okay, but that's not why you're doing it. That's what you're doing it for. And so if you keep peeling the layers back, at some point, hopefully, you'll get to the fact that like, why the significance of winning the medal, why that initial kind of answer to the question comes out. There's something probably a lot more deep rooted an internal within them to say, it just happens to be that I'm finding myself in this environment at the moment where this particular outcome will help to expedite this fulfillment deep within me. Yeah. But it's easier to say, oh, I want to win the medal, or I want to
Mm-hmm.
earn this amount of money, or I want to get to this position in my professional life, or, you know what I mean? All of these outcome based things, which, as we know, oftentimes when we get to those points or when we hit those things, are very unfulfilling, or certainly from a longer term perspective. We might get that short term kind of dopamine hit, but it's not the achievement or the accomplishment of the thing. It's the endeavor to get there. Like say, the systems that have allowed us to get to that point. That's where we get the fulfillment from. And I guess that's what we're aligning this to, in terms of if I can understand why this thing is important to me, as opposed to the significance of what it is that I'm going after, then that's the piece. So you go back to your CrossFit example again. Like you say, you get to that point, you get either that rush in terms of, okay, I've completed the workout, but then now what? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we go straight back into that kind of that loop, as to like say, okay, well, again, was that good enough, or that wasn't good enough, or what does that mean for the next session that I do, or where does that rank amongst the other guys that I've been doing that workout with, or what have you, as opposed to just really understanding the deeper purpose as to why that was significant for you. If I'm just to add another piece to that, Chase, if I can,
Please.
maybe because that's pretty, like I said, that's pretty deep, and the difficulty is I don't think I've done a really good job of explaining it, because it's difficult to explain. Yeah, but let's try and simplify it in another way. Use another lens through that. We'll go into we'll go into anything that we do in a particular state. Okay, so in an emotional state, or behavioral state, or whatever. So if we think that we start with the state, then the state is probably going to then define the story that we tell ourselves. Okay. So again, we can use that example if we want. So you're going into that workout, or
Mm-hmm.
an open, or whatever it is that you're doing. So you're going in with it, like within a certain state. Okay. The state is then, like I say, so if I'm in a state of, I don't know, just for ease sake, I'm nervous about what's going to happen here, right? So my state is a state of nervousness, whatever that means to anybody. That's probably then going to determine that internal narrative. Okay, so if I'm nervous, and again, then what am I telling myself? Okay, well, I might be telling myself like, well, what if this doesn't go right? What if this doesn't go to plan? What if the training that I've done up to this point doesn't allow me to be able to do the thing that I'm doing? Okay, and I can go wherever there, right? That can trigger. I can go down a deep hole if I want to there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the story will then probably determine my strategy. Okay, so again, if I'm telling myself those things, then again, that's going to impact on what I then do. Okay, do I play this a little bit safe? Do I hold back a bit here? Again, I don't know how that might play out, but it could play out in a multitude of ways, right? So if I know that my state determines the story, which then determines the strategy, right? If I want to try and affect the strategy, then I need to almost reverse engineer it. I need to change the story that I'm telling myself, and to change the story that I'm telling myself, I probably need to affect the state that I'm going into that thing with, right? So what if I was to replace going in nervous with going in excited? Yeah, going into the
Mm-hmm.
same, so the conditions are exactly the same, but now I've just changed my state of nervousness to now I'm in a state of excitement, which, by the way, physiologically probably feels very similar.
Very
Yeah,
similar.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the tag or the label that I put on it. But what is absolutely clear is that the story is going to then sound very different. Okay. So now I'm excited. Okay. Well, I wonder what will happen if, yeah, like all that time in the gym training for this moment. Like, again, I can't wait to get going. I'm really gassed to be up against these other guys. I'm going to use them as field. Did you see what I mean? Now, all of a sudden, that story is probably going to determine a different strategy to the nervous story told me. All I've done is changed nervous to excited. But that the impact on that could be like significantly different in terms of what it is.
And by change, Like you recognize, okay, I'm nervous. I'm going into this in a bad spot. I know it's nervous, but I am excited. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. And are you just listing off things that you're actually excited about to try and bring yourself over to that mindset?
Absolutely.
Even if you are a little bit nervous, you're just trying to change that story.
This isn't to say nerves or nervousness isn't a good thing. Again, I'm not saying that you need to try and kid yourself or fake it to say, right, okay, I'm feeling nervous, but I'm just going to pretend that I'm excited about it. Right? If it's nervous, then that's fine as well. But again, what do I want the nervousness to attribute to? If I've got a poor relationship with nerves, or again, we're just generally thinking that going into this with nerves isn't going to be useful for me, then I probably need to try and affect that state a little bit more. It might be what am I nervous for? Do you know what I mean? It might be I've built
Mhm.
up this situation in my mind that it's just like, okay, I'm really nervous, but like again, why? Am I
Absolutely.
nervous coming onto the pod? Like again, why am I nervous? Well, maybe I say something that it sounds a bit crazy, right? Or maybe I'm not able to articulate my. But again, like, why am I getting myself into that? Is it based on a previous experience? Is it based on an expectation? Again, I'm coming on here to try and have a great conversation with you. There's nothing to be nervous about. Again, I can
Mhm.
easily change that to. Again, I'm really excited for the opportunity to be able to share some of this. Right. So, oftentimes is like I say, these belief systems that we've built up in terms of well, this equals this. We look at it very binary. And I just need to probably just take a step back and a pause just to say, right, if I was to reframe this slightly differently, then what would it affect? What would change?
And in your experience, how long does it take somebody to effectively go from taking what you said here and being able to apply it in an effective manner?
Yeah. And
Months,
again, so
years?
well, it could be instantaneous in the sense that again, if I just change that to that, then again it might evoke a very different response. Right. To do that well, show me somebody who's mastered it. For me, it's the continual pursuit. Yeah, and we'll all get
Mhm.
to a level where we think that that could serve us. Okay, I'm at a level now where okay, I can do this the majority of the time, but again, that doesn't mean that I've got it mastered in any sense. And so again, like my honest appraisal of that is that it's infinite. If I want to continue to refine, I can continue to refine. But also, I can get to a stage where actually, for what I need right now, then this is serving me. I don't need to continue to explore this. I'm ever level. If we're to affect it and it has an effect, then the likelihood is we're probably going to continue to do it. Yeah. What people get frustrated or impatient about is like you say, I do something differently, I'll put it into practice, and it doesn't have the effect that I'm expecting it to have. And so I quite quickly just revert back to type or revert back to my default, which case, again, that's not useful either.
Mhm.
So I think first of all, and again, if we were to go back to almost your original question in terms of how I describe myself, I think the thing that I'm trying to get across to people is like if I can present them with an alternative or a number of alternatives to what their thought or belief is at the moment, then it gives a choice. Okay, insight gives choice. From the choice, I then need to do something to again determine the choice. I need to take action. So what a lot of people do is kind of see an alternative or learn of an alternative and just be like, okay, well, yeah, I quite like to consider that, but either not then want to affect it because that's the scary bit, right? Actually doing something with that choice, or probably more commonly not know how to. Yeah. So again, I've got the thing, but I don't actually like. It makes sense. I quite like to see what that alternative approach would be, but I don't actually know how to administer this. I don't know like practically how to apply it. And so again, as opposed to exploring ways of as to how, the likelihood is again, I'm just going to be okay. Well, I just continue to do what I've always done. So I think that the insight provides the choice. If I then am able to attach an appropriate action, to at least determine whether that choice is better than what I was doing before, indifferent to what I was doing before, or actually what I was doing before was okay. Yeah, and that reinforces that my approach to that was good, because an alternative hasn't necessarily shown it any better.
Hmm.
And again, I think that's a much better place to be, as opposed to just like being fixed and rigid in my approach and just saying I'm just going to take everything in the same way.
My wife and family and friends would describe me as very binary, very black and white. Throughout my life, I've been, you either win or you lose, you succeed or you fail. There's no in between. There's nothing that goes on in between there. And I take that into a lot of things, like whether that be training or food or whatever that is, it's either all or nothing. And over the past couple years, recent years, when I've gotten married, when I've met my wife, when I've stepped away from sport, I've started to develop that appreciation of the gray and of the journey to get there. And I think that's affected a significant amount of my mindset and my joy and my happiness in the things that I do. Is there is some beauty, there is a lot of joy in just the journey, and being able to focus purely on that and say, it doesn't matter if it's sport or whatever that is, I'm just enjoying my day here and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. That has been huge for my development and for my mental health in terms of just happiness and finding fulfillment in what I'm actually doing.
Again, I think my kind of sense again here is that if we're to take that kind of continuum example, right, and like say all at one end and nothing at the other end, and then
Mm-hmm.
everything in between, we're all going to operate somewhere on there. Yeah. So some are going to be at the top end of that continuum, and they're just going to be all in on everything that they do. Yeah. Like you say, some are just going to be just like, again, non-compliant, or I just can't even get started on it. And like I say, anywhere there. I think again, the point of this is to say, right, I shouldn't be this, I need to be this. Yeah. The point of this is just to acknowledge, okay, well, if I am that person, then again, when does it serve me? And when does it actually become a bit burdensome for me? And so if I know how I can operate up and down there, knowing that the majority of the time, I'm probably, like I say, I'm probably going to show up in the same kind of space. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's the bit. I think what we're in a what we're in a kind of danger um, zone to become is just like the comparison trap, just to look at others and just be like, okay, well, I can't be me. I've got to be this. And again, that's not useful. Like we've really got to, like I say, understand us, and just to say, when might it be better to be able to be a little bit more of something, or a little bit less of maybe some of my natural dispositions. Um, so I think there's that piece. I think the other bit is, again, like, again, sounds a really simple question, but again, what does success mean? Yeah. And if we're to really sit back, oftentimes success, like we said before, isn't the shiny object, isn't the accomplishment, isn't doing the thing. Yeah. Success is all of the bits that allow us to get to that point. And again, whether we even get to that point or not is kind of irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so again, just some understanding in terms of like when you're going out to do anything, it's just like, okay, well, what is this? What is why is this important for me? What is this all about? What might success look like? Um, and again, I think if we can get that relationship, when we talk about kind of putting this back to kind of some theory around psychology, I mean, it's kind of classic goal setting theory, right? In terms of what's become again a bit common language, the kind of process over the outcome type thing. If we become solely outcome focused, then it probably restricts our ability to actually expedite that outcome. Okay. we've got no consideration in terms of how I'm going to get to that point. And so the narrative has become a little bit, okay, we need to be a lot more process focused. We need to know the how bit. But again, my kind of resistance to that a little bit is if we become so entrenched in the how we're going to do it, again, we've no aspirational direction in terms of what it is that we're going after, right? So both things are equally important. But again, it's having the ability to be able to pivot between the two. I need to have that North Star or that destination that I'm working towards. I need to have that outcome. Yeah. Otherwise, why am I doing what I'm doing? But then I also need to have an ability to then be able to just bring it right back to, okay, and what is required of me now to be able to move me a little bit closer towards that. Yeah. And again, I think that might just kind of labor the all or nothing approach in terms of if I'm all in, then I'm probably just leaning a little bit more outcome focused, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm nothing, then I'm probably just like trying to find tinker ways as to do things and never actually achieving anything. Yeah. And so again, how might I be able to kind of pivot up and down that axis to say, I'm definitely going after some things. And some of those might be really like definite and objective, and some of them might be more kind of aspirational.
Mm-hmm.
But then what is required of me now? How do I know at some point that I'm on the right track? How do I know that I've got momentum, that I'm making progress towards this thing? And I'm not just still and stagnant, or I'm not just going off in a totally different direction because I'm, like I said, I'm playing around with different ways to do it without really understanding why I'm doing it in the first place.
I think that way of thinking is tremendously liberating, especially for somebody who's not historically thought that way. I've come. You wish you have that goal oriented aspect. Obviously, a lot of that is out of your control. You can control a lot. You can control your effort, but a lot of it is out of your control. And regardless of the effort you put in, if that outcome is out of your control and you don't achieve it, then there is no gratification. There is no output for all that effort you put in. You immediately feel like you failed.
It becomes binary again, doesn't it? Exactly that. It becomes win or lose. Yeah. And again, if I'm going through life with like a tick or a cross against everything that I'm doing, then it's going to be a pretty turbulent ride, I think. Um, as opposed to, again, really reflecting on the things that I've learned along the way, or the skills that I've been able to apply along that way and refine even further, or the people that I've impacted along the way, or again, whatever all of those things are, those are far more sustainable, far more empowering for you, over the, like you say, the attainment of the thing that I might have been going after. We see it in. I mean, I'm privileged to have worked in Olympic sport over here for a number of years, and you see it every Olympic cycle. Yeah, and like if I podium and get to, and I'm stood there with the gold medal around my neck, it's very temporary. And we get this thing called Olympic blues in terms of like very soon after that, it's again, it's so now what? I feel that I've reached my peak. Now what do I now what do I do? And actually, the the whole point of having that medal around my neck hasn't taken me anywhere really. Um, so yeah, I think it's just the ability to have a sense of direction. So to know that you're going after something, but not to be too kind of placed in that camp. To come back and, like I say, just to really understand the systems or the steps or the milestones that I need to get to be able to move me towards that. Like I say, oftentimes, whether we achieve the thing or not, it's then the reflection as to what got me to this place in the first place is where I'm going to really garner most of my learning.
For this reflection, do you think it's better just an internal dialogue, or do you recommend a journal?
It's interesting. So I don't think there's again one of the biggest challenges I've got with psychology as a discipline is it's very subjective. Yeah, I've come from a strength conditioning background, which is far more objective.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the time, it would be so much easier to say, in response to that question, oh, a journal would be much better for these reasons. Yeah. And for some people, a journal would be much better for those reasons. But journaling isn't the answer for everybody. And so again, it's again, what is the purpose of that? So am I able to organize my thought internally? Yeah. Or am I the sort of person that by actually writing some of that thought down allows me to clear my mind? Yeah. So again, I think what we're in the danger of doing in this space is to say that, well, here's the solution. And undoubtedly that will be the solution for some people, but not for everybody. So my answer to that question would be, okay, here might be some mechanisms to help me do that. Okay. It might be that I just spend time and sit with my thought. Okay. And if I'm able to regulate and organize my thought, then that's okay. I don't need to go out and then buy a journal. It might be that I speak into my phone. Yeah. And actually verbalize that thought. Again, what I do with that is kind of irrelevant to some degree. It might be that I then delete the voice note, but it's out of my head. It might be that, like I say, I take some kind of written practice, and again, that is effect. So it's really understanding what the effect is for me. Like, what is it that I'm trying to do, for what reason, and what mechanism or platform might I be able to use to assist with that. I would advocate journaling to a lot of people. From my experience, I've tried journaling and it really doesn't work for me. And so it's being able to administer something and then to have some kind of reflection to say, is this actually helping me or is this hindering me? From my own personal experience, journaling started to become a real burden. It was just like, okay, I've got to do the thing. So yeah, so I would say try, like, again, almost the choice piece again, the insight piece. Try. Okay. Here are some ways of doing it. Okay, well, I might try journaling. If journaling sticks, great, you found it. If it doesn't, then don't feel pressured into I've got to make this journaling thing work for me. Well, let me go and explore a different way. I'm actually running the program at the moment, so I've got like a cohort online program, and as part of that, as a support, produced some journals to assist with it. And I've had quite a lot of calls with some of the members that are on that program, and they're like, "Oh, I've not journaled today." I'm like, "It's absolutely fine. Like, it's not a journaling program. It's something here that may assist you and may not. You may never pick those journals up, but it's there if you want it and to try it. But again, I think everybody straight away was just like, okay, well, when am I going to journal? What time am I going to assign to it? What if I don't do it for a day? And again, that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is if this is going to help, then use it. If it's not, then don't don't worry about it. Yeah, pass it on to somebody that might help.
I think those people are similar to myself, and like, okay, like you're trying, like even now I'm trying to pinpoint like the best way to do it. How, like, do I apply this daily? Do I do it situational based, and trying to find that so I can then do it objectively. Oh, I did that, or I did not do that. And I can then reflect. And again, just going back to the whole point, is that's not the point. It's a tool in your tool belt that you can use as needed.
Yeah, if we're trying to optimize everything for optimizing's sake, then like I say, it's probably going to have a lesser effect than if we were to use it when it's going to be most appropriate. But like we can say the same about everything with that, right? If we're just trying to refine everything to the absolute detail, it's probably not going to be impactful. It's probably actually going to be detrimental to us. So if I've got these understandings as to when some of these things might be useful for me, and again, when am I going to use it, and when is it going to be useful to sit without it and not use it? This, just on that note, Chase, again, I think this is the biggest barrier for a lot of people. They want the answer. They want the golden bullet. Again, I'm going through, like, this is a situation. Tell me what I need to do. If you're telling me to journal, I'm going to go out and buy the most expensive journal. I'm going to journal, right? Because if that's the solution, well, it could be, but similarly, it couldn't. It might not be. And I think that's where we're at the moment. People just want the quick win.
Mhm.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's a long game.
And do you find like you just need to try these things and
A
find
lot
what
of the
works
time,
best?
it's just like just do it. Just like let's not talk about it. Let's just do it. I spoke at a conference a few months ago. This is quite a funny story in hindsight, but again, we were talking about, like this was the point I was making exactly. Like a lot of the people in the audience had expressed a level of overwhelm and this kind of this kind of burnout kind of um, fallacy that again I can't, I've not got the capacity to take on anything more and whatever. So again, what I was really promoting was just like it's not about taking on more. It's really just about refining what you've got and potentially even taking things away. So to really try and simplify a lot of this. And spoke for about 45 minutes around this, the whole messaging around this, just trying to establish some really sound principles and foundations along this. And then we went to questions at the end, and somebody at the end, the first question was, what books do you recommend I read on this? And I'm just like, you're trying to you're trying to add even more to what I'm trying. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, okay, well, where can I find, almost like, where can I find the answer? What do you suggest I go and do? But again, I think that's how we're wired a lot of the time. It's just like, okay, well, give me some more information that I can consume to try and make this simpler. Actually, by consuming that information, it probably makes it even more complicated. So yeah, I just thought it was quite ironic that whole, like, for a 45-minute keynote about trying to make things simpler and going back to foundation. The first question asked is like, give me some more resource that I can consume to try and make this simpler.
That's always how it is. And uh, I would be in that same boat, or at least I would have been up
Yeah,
to
yeah,
even like a year ago, or
yeah,
even up to this year. It's easy. Like it's you want that mental masturbation, if you will. Like you
yeah,
feel like you're doing something, but you're doing nothing
yeah,
because
absolutely. Yeah,
you're not applying anything. And so, if I could take kind of what you're saying and distill it, please correct me here. It's to your point, not adding more, and it's not even setting a rigid schedule or system. It's just that awareness, like, oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed here, or I'm not happy, or something's going on here. Why? And peeling back that layer and kind of defining what that is.
and I think that's that's a pretty good definition or understanding as to what adaptability is. Yeah. And we know that when we're adaptable to situations, then again, we're probably going to be able to, like say, flex or find a way to be able to evoke or express a different return to what I'm facing. Yeah. Whereas, like I say, if I take everything the same way and with exactly the same outlook or same expectation as to what's going to happen, then that's going to be very inconsistent. So again, yeah, I think the more adaptable we can become, the less fixed or the less rigid we become, then I think the more that's going to serve us over a period of time, the more sustainable that approach will be.
I'm a big fan of sport and fitness for some of this very reason. And like it puts you in a difficult situation, and then how can you adapt, or how do you respond to that? Obviously, you can take it too far if that's your whole thing, and you're very binary win lose. It's not as good. But do you find that these lessons, this mindset, this ability, obviously we've been talking a lot about sport, is transferable heavily outside of it? Or is there any special difference that you have to do for somebody who's an athlete versus not?
It goes back to how I said I describe myself as a performance psychologist. I see it as performance. So whether that's a sporting performance or whether that's a business performance or whether that's an education performance, I think a lot of the principles, a lot of the theoretical underpinning is absolutely consistent throughout. The difference is, and again, I think this is something that we've got wrong and something that I was very um, kind of conscious of not adding to, was to come from a certain environment and then go into a different environment and saying, well, this is how we do it in this environment, so this is how you must do it in your environment. As much as the principle is the same, the context, the situation, and nuance is very different. So I think like good application of this is to say, right, there's an understanding that, like I say, a transference of what this is, but then really like knowing your environment that you're going into. Yeah, it's not just sharing sporting anecdotes in a corporate environment to say, okay, now you're gonna be set. It's going to be like, if this is a sporting example, then what is your example? Let's really understand that, and let's really unpick that and apply these principles to that, as opposed to just a copy paste and putting it into that context. And vice versa. Again, I think sport uses business as an example, right? In terms of like from a leadership perspective, or from an attainment, or a goal setting type perspective. This is what's used in business. So let's just apply these same principles to sport. They probably will work, but without understanding the depth of the change, the difference, then again, it's probably going to be a bit more temporal. So yeah, that's what I try to do. Like, I believe that there is a lot of similarity, but it's going in and really understanding your context, understanding your environment, understanding the situation, and then applying it to that, as opposed to just blanket approach. This is what to do.
I was on your Instagram. That's how we connected. And in your bio, you have again, you have a link to your program, which I'd love to talk about here. But you also have a link to getting your performance score, and I did that, and I have mine here. And in that, it breaks it up into 4 different sections, or learn, nurture, manage, and thrive. What would you say those 4? What are those 4 different sections?
So again, just to step back a little bit, when I was trying to organize my own thought around how to deliver this, again, I looked back over what was pretty much 2 decades and said, right, how might I be able to learn from a lot of the things that I've seen and a lot of the themes that have come out from this. And so I started to try and organize some of these things in my mind. And at the same time, around the same time, again, I don't know how I was exposed to it, but this thought of the essential elements back in ancient times of earth, air, fire, and water,
Mhm.
and I thought, okay, that could be like a nice way to be able to position this. That again, it's not just this kind of this hierarchical kind of this, then this, then this, then this, and then I've like established everything that I need to do. There's almost like this building of one on the other. But then when I get to a point, then it kind of comes back round to the beginning again, just saying, right, now how does this apply in the situation that I find myself in? So that was kind of I guess the inspiration in terms of just how I've presented this. So start with learn, because like we've referenced already in the conversation, a lot of this stuff starts with an awareness. If I can understand me better than I do already, then again, I'm probably going to impact or influence a lot of these things differently, right? So I need to learn about myself. Also, if I know me as well as I can, that helps me to understand and know others better, right? So that first stage of learn just looks at, again, just understanding a lot of what we've spoken about already, just understanding like how I show up, what some of my kind of behavioral preferences might be, but also knowing that it's not just fixed and rigid in that. It also looks at what's important to me, some of the values that I might align to, some of the things that actually allow me to kind of live the life that I'm trying to live. Another area of psychology that I'm very passionate about is a strengths-based approach. So again, looks at what I'm good at, why I'm good at that, and again, how I might be able to express that as optimally as possible. So if I've got that as a foundation, then I move on to the manage part, where okay, well, this is more now about like an application of some skills and strategies based on that understanding as to who I am. So if I apply some of these some certain thinking patterns, if I can really understand what drives me or what motivates me, um, those kind of things, then again I can start to apply some things, put some things in place to be able to manage my awareness. The nurture um, kind of pillar, if you like, then looks at what I need around me. How can I grow that further? What ecosystem do I need to develop to be able to operate in the space that I'm trying to operate? And then thrive is almost the final stage of this 4-stage framework, which is then an application in terms of like putting all of this together and now just trying to put it into practice, right? So the situation that I find myself in, how can I really test this out and allow me to, again, like fulfill my potential? Yeah, express my potential.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've kind of said already, then unfortunately, we then haven't cracked the code. We haven't completed the game at that point. Again, in my mind, it's almost like this infinity loop that when I get to that point, it's okay, well, now if I come back to the beginning, what more do I need to learn about myself? To then further refine some of the skills and strategies that I apply, to then enhance that ecosystem even further, to then put into practice. And again, similar to, like you said, that pursuit of like what mindset means, I see this as being an endless and infinite pursuit if we want it to be. Yeah. And so we can continue to go through that loop as often as we wish. Or we might just say, okay, again, this is okay. Like for what is required of me right now, then I'm in a really good play. I'm in a really good position. So that's kind of the origin as to what that looks like. The performance scorecard that you did again is a pretty kind of entry point diagnostic, I guess, just to say, okay, where do I kind of position myself across all of those 4 pillars? And if there's one this probably requires more work than the others, then what might that be? And here might be some suggestion as to how I can then potentially impact or influence that.
Yeah, just to go through my overall score is a 52%. My highest pillar was the learn pillar at 57. And I think that's pretty accurate in terms of I do have some degree of self-awareness. I feel like I know my limitations. I know my behaviors. Where I struggle is like changing and refining and being okay with those and changing them slowly versus beating myself up and attacking that behavior. Then I go to a 56% at manage, which is do you have the skills and strategies required to advance? Then I go to a 55% at nurture. And then finally, I drop down to a 28% for thrive.
Again, I'm interested to know what your reflection was on that in terms of, and again, the percentages are there as a representation, right? Mm-hmm. Again, what this isn't is I guess a measure of capability necessarily. It's just almost again just like, okay, well, like you say, across your learn, manage, and nurture, they're all relatively similar, and yet mm-hmm. there's a disparity with thrive. Again, I'm interested to learn what that means for you.
Yeah. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like,
so you say you've got, again, like from a learn, I'm suggesting from the percentage that I've got back that I've got a good level of self-awareness, right? And then from the other 2, again, there's not a lot of difference there. So, okay, I've got a good level of self-awareness. I've got some application of to skills and strategies. And I've got some organization around me in terms of like how I apply that. Mm-hmm. But then the thrive bit, the actual, like what that looks at really is then the actual application of it. There's something not quite there.
Absolutely. I think a lot of that stems from my black and white, my binary mindset, and then that pursuit of looking for the right answer. Like not putting in the work there, like reading all the books, listening to the podcast, watching the YouTubes, whatever that is, just like consume, and then nothing changes. And so over the past bit of time, I've really dived in on not consuming that stuff and just reflecting on whatever that looks like for me. And I feel like this Thrive score is going up. It does need a lot of work, but that is something I suffer from, is like you have this awareness and you work on changing it. and then something happens and you revert back to your old way, and it's like, oh, nothing's happened, nothing's changed. I'm here in this position.
It's so interesting. Even some of the language that you've used there. So in that thrive piece, we look at reflection as a skill. Yeah. So again, oftentimes people will mark themselves low on reflection, so they don't take that pause, they don't take that moment just to be like, okay, what does this actually mean? And we know, and again, as a practitioner, then is something that is like integral within our professional practice. Is it we like like reflective practice or reflection is absolutely critical to being able to understand the situations that we find ourselves in. So taking that moment again, just understanding what's been to potentially inform or not even just to make sense is really critical. Another thing we look at in that thrive piece is around what we spoke about already, the goal setting bit, right? And again, so it's kind of no surprise in terms of like you saying, if I'm either an all or nothing, or historically have been an all or nothing, then again, that's probably going to have an impact in terms of my approach to how I go about doing things. Am I too outcome or task focused? Yeah. Or sometimes again, do I flip flop between that and then just being no outcome and just being trying to work out ways to do things? And then the other part of thrive, which is kind of then integrates into, I guess, goes back to a bit of a previous life for me, but integrates into a lot of other things that you're going to be interested in is where mindset or psychology, like the interface between all of these other things as well. So what is the impact that nutrition might have on my psychology? What is the impact that movement has on my psychology? What is the impact that sleep has on my psychology? So it looks at some more kind of probably more physiological based components to say, okay, well, there's an absolute kind of synergy with these things as well. And sometimes it might just be looking at those in a bit more depth as to then how that might impact the way I view the world or what I potentially do within that view. Um, so yeah, this is cool. And like I say, the point of that isn't like I say a measure of capability. It's not to say I'm trying to get to 100%. It's just saying trying to highlight, okay, well, where are areas that I might need to pay a bit more attention to? And even if I brought that Thrive score up to closer to 50% that the others were around, then again, what would that look like? And that might just be, like you say, that might be some kind of sleep-based intervention. Yeah, just to see what impact that has.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm glad you found it useful.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm interested to like keep this in the forefront of my mind and keep trying to apply that aspect and not have that black and white approach. Like do better, do better, do better. Oops, today wasn't a good day. Do better, do better, do better. And just trying to string those days together and recognize that is great. And that's something I want to continue with. And I would imagine that, like you said, the goal is not to get 100% because you can't get 100%. So as you tick up this pillar, as you tick up the percentage, it's significantly harder to go from 50 to 60% than it is to go from 30 to 40 or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, it's more as a metric to say where are areas that I feel that I can develop. Yeah, and like we said already, like how do I measure the effectiveness of some of those things? Yeah. So again, if I'm doing something and yet, so again, I'm adding something in, and yet that score isn't changing or improving, or again, what the score represents isn't changing, then it probably suggests that particular intervention probably isn't going to be that useful for me. Whereas if I do something and I see some difference in that, or again, more importantly, I experience a difference in that, probably suggests that I found something that I'm going to continue to do.
I noticed on your landing page for your program, you have a couple of James Clear quotes in there. One of my all-time favorite books is Atomic Habits, and that was one of the books that I know I've read, I've consumed a lot, but that one has such easy application of what it teaches. And it's one of the most value that I've ever received from a book because it talks about like that identity shift in terms of like you set these grandiose, these audacious goals, and then like I'm gonna run every day, and then you don't run one day, and you're like, oh, I didn't do it, I failed, and then it peters out. Versus just setting these small, almost impossible to achieve like micro goals, like to take the example of running of just putting those shoes on, and you can develop that history and that foundation, and you can look back and be like, no, I am capable of following through with what I say and what I do, and you build that mindset and that motivation and that identity off of that.
I think again, I think it's a great book in the sense that it's written in a way that has practical application. Um, so again, I guess like the inspiration for me was similar in terms of like this, like what we're talking about is really complex. Yeah, whether that's like forming habits or whether that's neuroscience. Like it's you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean. What I want to try and do, and I think, and again, I'm not comparing myself to James Clear in any sense, but again, what I think that book does really well is takes something that's pretty complicated to understand and positions it in a way that makes it far more understandable, but probably more importantly, also gives some practical application to it. If I then just go and do this, and so again, kind of feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit, but it goes back to again by understanding it just gives me a choice. The insight gives me further choice, but what it aligns to as well is here's some application to then inform that choice. Um, yeah, again, I think if we understand something differently and apply those principles, and again, we're probably going to experience a different response, right? And I think that's why that particular book has resonated with so many people because people have taken things and applied it and seen something different from it and just been like, okay, now I see that my approach is changed. My approach is different.
Absolutely. For people who are listening to this, if they made it this far, they listened to everything, and assuming they are kind of like the person in your keynote, they're going to be like, okay, what's next? What's the book that I have to read, or anything like that? What would you
Yeah,
say to that person? Like, what would you say to that person? And then, yeah, let's leave it there. What would you say to that person?
yeah. Again, I don't think there's like I wouldn't point them in any particular direction to say this is a text that you need to read or this is something that you need to consume or listen to. Again, I think it's really understanding what you require, what you want at the moment. So I think my first piece of advice would be, like I say, to almost get rid of some of those things, like to try and simplify some of this. To like one of my kind of principles is to really understand the basics, really understand the fact. If I got a really good foundational knowledge of something, yeah, and again, I consistently apply the foundation as opposed to trying to look for the new thing or the next best thing, or just to try and keep adding to that. And I think again that probably just like steers us away from what it is that we're trying to do that for in the first place. So I would just say like, again, if there would be one piece of advice, it would just be don't try and complete the game. Yeah, for to use that analogy, I think a lot of people are looking for the secret code or the hack to
Mhm.
be like, okay, well, if I'm at that level and I've got an ability to unlock more levels, then again, do I want to put the reps into to really do that properly, or do I just want the cheat code and be able to accelerate that? So again, I just be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself. That this takes time. Go at the cadence and the pace that is right for you, as opposed to just trying to tick it off because, like I say, that's what I feel like I need to do, or that's what everybody seems to be telling me that I need to do. Um,
That's huge.
if there if there's things that inform that along the way, then fine. Um, but again, like I say, if there's a first point of entry, what don't I know about myself? It's going to be really useful to know a bit more about myself. That would be where I'd start. Start with awareness, build that awareness, understand yourself as best as you can.
A thought of, excuse me, a thought experiment I've been doing a little bit more lately is like we live in this monetary, world. Like we're chasing money, we're chasing the paycheck, we're trying to make a little bit more. And I like most people get that sense where it's like, okay, how can I make more in my career? How can I bring in more money? And then I'll be happier, and then I'll be able to live what I want to do, what I'm gonna do next. But it's so funny. Like when I have those feelings, I think about, okay, like what happens if I got that money? I would still be eating the way I'm currently eating. I would sleep the way I'm currently sleeping. I'd train the way I'm currently training. I would be doing almost everything, if not everything, in what I'm doing now. And so just being able to have that reflection is like, what are you waiting for down the road versus like you're living very much a life you'd want to live regardless of income already, and just trying to, as you say, not win the game, but enjoy the game where I'm at.
I think again, there's a lot of good stuff out there that really promotes that way of thinking, and then there's obviously a lot of distraction that takes us away from that way of thinking. What this isn't about, Chase, is to say I cannot think like that, right? It's not suppressing that thought. What it is about managing that thought. Is that thought serving me well right now? So again, I think it's like, again, we've almost referenced previously, at times it's really useful to project forwards. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to look at what is to come and be, again, excited by that or inspired by that, but not being too fixed to that. Because like I say, there's a lot of things, a lot of variables that are going to be out of our control in that. Similarly, it's useful to look back. Yeah. And again, a lot of our learning comes from what's been and what's happened. But again, to dwell in that time isn't probably going to be useful either, because again, we can't change or we can't control what's been a lot of the time. And so again, similar to how we said before, in terms of if I'm looking at towards my outcome and looking to my process, and again, it's the interchange between those two things. Again, I kind of use the same analogy with that, in terms of, okay, when's it going to be useful for me to project forwards? When's it going to be useful for me to just think back? And then how am I able to bring it to now? How am I able to bring it to present? What is required of me at this moment in time? And again, if we can maneuver that, if we're skillful enough to be able to position ourselves there, then again, I think that aligns to this, like you said, this more sustainable pursuit. Yeah, we become more understanding as to why we're doing what we're doing, as opposed to just, again, just replaying all my past mistakes, or becoming a little bit too dreamy in terms of like what could be, and what it is that I'm striving for. Um, Again, just with anything, all we can determine is the present moment. Yeah. And if I want to do that to the best of my ability, then if by default I'm 20%, my attention is 20% in the future and 20% in history, then I'm only ever 60% present.
Just trying to be present. That's the goal. And that's something I've been working on tremendously. Enjoying where I'm at, enjoying what's going on.
Good.
Don't
Sounds
think
good.
about what I failed or think about what I want to do next time.
Again, not don't think about it, but know when is going to be useful to think about it. Right. Like I say, there's a lot that you can take from what's been, and there's a lot to take from what could be. Yeah. So spend time there.
Mm.
But again, when it's the right time to be present, be present. I think that's what most people do. Is at the time that they need to be present, they're still one foot in the past or one foot in the future.
Your program, and would you mind saying it for me? Because LMNT is it?
So element. So the company is called Elementary Performance.
Okay.
So my consultancy is Elementary Performance, spelled LMNTARY. So again, a couple of things there. Elementary in terms of the elements that we've spoken about already, a bit of an inspiration there.
Mm-hmm.
Elementary around probably more an Americanism than an English word, in terms of just, again, just some foundational
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, right? And LMNT just happens to be learn, manage, nurture, and thrive.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't even notice that.
so, so there's a few bits there in terms of what that looks like. So yeah, the consultancy is Elementary Performance. The program is a program we just recently launched. We're in week 4 of a 16-week initial cohort, which is called Limitless. And it's called Limitless because, again, what we're trying to do is dispel some of the things that really limit some of our belief systems. And essentially, the program is what we spoke about there, just going through each of those 4 kind of pillars, and exploring bits within all of those to then get to a point to say, okay, well, again, where do I continue this? This is, like I say, it's just kind of an understanding through some journal practice, if that's useful, through some more direct kind of delivery and education, and through some lessons around all of that, that get people to a position to say, okay, now I've got, again, an understanding as to what this looks like, to then be able to continue on that journey as much as often as they want to. So yeah, it's been a little while coming. It's something I've wanted to do for a while, and again, like I say, very much aligned to the fact that I want this kind of experience to be available to as many people as possible, not just to elite athletes or corporate professionals, but to people that have got as much right to understand some of these concepts as well. So yeah, it's been great so far. We're getting some really good feedback. We're starting to build, and again, what's integral for me in this pursuit is to build this community of practice as well, to allow others to meet other like-minded others and share experiences, and like I say, learn from one another as well. So it's not just a kind of direct course in terms of a teaching methodology or teaching approach. Is hopefully as insightful by communicating with other community members as it can be. So yeah, no, it's been cool.
In this course, they can find it on your Instagram. Um,
Yeah, so there's a link there. Again, we're kind of I think there's a waitlist link on there. So again, we're currently we're currently, as I say, 4 weeks into a 16-week cohort. So hopefully, again, if it's been successful, we're making a few refinements as we go, but we'll look to take the second kind of cohort through pretty much off the back of the first. So yeah, if people are interested, there's a link there, and there'll be communication coming out as and when, as to when the commencement of that course will be.
Fantastic. And we were talking before we jumped in, but your graphic designer, your media team, they're very good. I love it.
My business partner is the creative genius behind all of this. I sit and ideate and share my ideas, and he does his magic and comes up with some great representations of it. Similarly, again, aligns to that whole piece around trying to make something that is really complicated as simple as possible, but without doing it an injustice. I think he's got an absolute skill to be able to, like I say, to visualize oftentimes a lot of these concepts in a way that resonates with a lot of people. So yeah, super fortunate that we've got this working relationship, and yeah, just take a look at the work, and always open to collaborations or any ideas in terms of like interpretations of theoretical pieces or frameworks or whatever. Then yeah, happy to communicate with people around that.
Yeah, he does a phenomenal job of taking kind of this nuance and this abstract and then putting it into a visual.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a wizard.
Well, Chris, we have a tradition on this podcast where I ask the guest who would be the person that they would be most interested in listening to or speaking with. And if I ever do get them on the podcast, I would, of course, let them know that you're the reason they're there. Who would that person be for you?
Wow. Got me. I'm gonna there's a guy that again that I've read some of his work and followed some of his work. And again, I'm sure you know of him, a guy called Adam Grant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, who again, I think the reason I'm suggesting him is I think the way he again just expresses some pretty complex stuff is pretty inspiring for me. Um, super knowledgeable, but again shares that in a way that really is understandable and resonates with me. So I guess yeah, if people resonate some of the things that I'm putting out there, then again I'm one of those people for him. So yeah, get him on your booking list, Chase, and
You got it.
that would be a great episode.
I would love to. Well, Chris, thank you again so much for your time. Tell people where they can find you, where they can follow you, where they can get the program.
Yeah, again, I'm pretty most active again on Insta, and on I'm on LinkedIn as well, so slightly different kind of audience there. But yeah, just search elementary performance, as I say, elementary LMNT performance on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Um, and yeah, if people want to connect, then super happy to, as I say. And uh, again, concepts or ideas or inspirations, and then again, please share, and we'll do our utmost to work with you with that.
Love it. And I personally, I would absolutely recommend the follow because again, your page is great. The daily posts, the simplifying and the visualizing of the nuanced topic is fantastic, and it just gives you that. If you're scrolling, it gives you that pause for a second where you can actually
Hopefully,
reflect a little bit and that
hopefully.
reminder. So again, thank you so much for taking your time today.
Thank you, Chess. Thanks a lot.